Okay, let's talk about something we all face: choosing a career, buying a house. Heck, even just picking a new laptop for your team. Some decisions can feel, well, totally paralyzing, right? But what if there was a clear framework to make those choices better, faster, and with way more confidence? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today.
I mean, think about it. From the second you wake up, your life is just this constant stream of decisions. Most of them are pretty small, almost automatic, what to wear, what to have for breakfast. But sprinkled in with all that easy stuff are the big ones, the choices that can literally define your entire path.
Yeah, these are the big ones. We're talking about the career pivots, the major investments, those key strategic moves that really shape our success and our future. You get these right, and man, the path forward looks bright. But if you get them wrong, well, let's just say we've all been there.
So, what's the deal? Is making these huge choices just a matter of gut feeling and, I don't know, a coin toss? Or is there a better, more reliable way to handle these critical moments? The answer, and this is the good news, is a resounding yes. Okay, so before we dive into the how-to, let's take a second to really frame the problem, because it's not just about that final single choice. It's about understanding the entire journey that gets you to that point. Yeah, I'm sure this image feels pretty familiar to a lot of you. It's that classic moment of indecision, right? You're at a crossroads, the options are kind of fuzzy, and the stakes just feel incredibly high. It's that exact feeling of being stuck that a good, structured process is designed to cut right through. All right, so let's get practical. We're going to walk through a 7-step blueprint that can take all that confusion and turn it into real clarity for pretty much any complex decision you're facing. So here they are, the 7 steps that'll take you from that vague sense of, ugh, what do I do, to a solid, well-reasoned choice. Now, to make this super concrete, we're going to follow a manager named Tarek as he uses this exact process to solve a really common business problem.
Okay, step one is simple. You have to identify the problem. You see, every decision really kicks off with a gap between the way things are right now and the way you want them to be. So for Tarek, our sales manager, the problem is pretty straightforward. His team's laptops are old and painfully slow, and it's killing their performance. The desired state? A productive team with fast, modern tools. That space between those two things, that is the problem he has to solve. All right, next up, Tarek has to define what a good solution even looks like. He does this by setting his decision criteria. So he knows what's important, right? Memory, battery life, how much it weighs, the warranty, and display quality. But, and this is super important, they're not all equally important. As you can see on his list, memory and storage are the top priority, so he gives that a weight of 10. Display quality, on the other hand, it's nice to have, but less critical, so it only gets a 3. Okay, with his criteria all set, Tarek goes out and finds some alternatives. In this case, 8 different laptop models that could work. Then comes the analysis part. He goes through and scores each laptop from 1 to 10 on how well it stacks up against each of his criteria. So, for example, the HP ProBook. It gets a perfect 10 for memory and storage. Awesome. But it only gets a 3 for battery life. Ouch. Now, this next part is maybe the most important piece of the whole analysis. You can't just add up the raw scores, right? Because that would mean display quality is just as important as battery life, which we know it isn't. So the trick is to multiply each of those scores by the importance weight you gave it earlier. This gives you a weighted score for each feature, which actually reflects what you really care about. And when you tally up all those weighted scores, look at that. The process just cuts right through all the noise. A clear winner emerges, the Dell Inspiron, with a total score of 249. Now, what's interesting is that it wasn't the absolute best in every single category, but it gave the best overall value based on what Tarek said was most important. And of course, the journey doesn't quite end there. The final 2 steps are to actually execute the decision, buy the laptops, and then, down the line, evaluate how well it worked. Did it actually solve the original problem? So this whole 7-step process that Tarek just used, it's a perfect example of what experts call rational decision-making. It's basically the perfect world scenario for how to make a choice. But what's really fascinating about this model are the massive assumptions it makes. It assumes that we're completely logical beings, that the problem is always crystal clear, that we somehow know every single possible alternative out there, and that we can predict all the consequences perfectly, so we can pick the absolute hands-down #1 best option every single time. I mean, it sounds amazing in a textbook, right? But let's be real for a second. When was the last time you had perfect information and unlimited time to make a big decision? Yeah, probably never.
And that leads us to a much more realistic concept, one that actually acknowledges our human limitations. It's called bounded rationality.
So let's put these two ideas side by side. On one hand, you've got pure rationality, which is all about maximizing, finding the absolute best, perfect 10 out of 10 outcome. But on the other hand, bounded rationality gets that most of the time we're just looking for a solution that's good enough. And there's a great word for this, satisficing. In the real world, instead of perfect information, we're dealing with messy, incomplete data. And instead of pure logic, our own human biases and mental shortcuts always find a way to creep in. The truth is, our ability to be perfectly rational is bounded, or limited, by three big things you see right here: our own brain power, the fact that we never have all the information, and the constant pressure of time. We just can't analyze everything forever. It's impossible. And that brings us right back to the core strategy for dealing with this reality: satisficing. It's this great mashup of the words satisfy and suffice. And look, this isn't about being lazy or settling. It's about being smart and efficient. It's about finding the first option that clears your good enough bar and then moving forward. But the story doesn't end there. There's one more powerful force at play in all of our choices, something we often try to dismiss as, unscientific, and that's our intuition. So that gut feeling you get, it's not some kind of magic. It's actually your brain's incredibly powerful, rapid-fire pattern recognition machine. It's a decision that's based on the sum total of your past experiences, your values, your emotions, and all that subconscious data your mind has been chewing on in the background. It is a totally valid and really valuable piece of the puzzle. So the big question is, how do we put all of this together? Well, it's not about choosing one method over the other. It's about building a flexible toolkit for making decisions. So what's the bottom line? Here's your takeaway. For those really big, complex, high-stakes decisions like the one Tarek had, use that 7-step rational framework. It's going to force you to be clear. At the very same time, you've got to acknowledge your limits. Know when a good enough solution is actually the smartest move. And finally, please, don't ignore your intuition. When the data is messy or time is running out, that gut feeling sharpened by all your experience can honestly be your best guide. Because ultimately, the best decisions are almost always a blend of systematic analysis and that intuitive wisdom. The framework gives you clarity to see the path, but your gut gives you the conviction to walk it. So I'll leave you with this thought. The framework gives you clarity. Your gut gives you conviction. Which will you trust on your next big decision?